something really important that I should have said in the last one when I was going on and on is that if you're having those feelings where you're seeing a color such as amber, when you're walking around spots that, let's say, you then find out or had already knew had strange anomalies, and then something that seems to always happen, which is important, is if you're a type of person who has the ability to unwind their spirit organ, I've talked about that, not going to get into that, and fall under the category of dissociative behavior as defined by Kenneth Ring's Omega Project, you may hear voices, okay, when you're in certain geometric location that has ley lines running through them. This is common. This is something that I've noticed everyone seems to hear or experience in a hotspot, And you have to remember that you want to give in to that and not be afraid of it, because once you're scared, what happens is the negative consciousness round, which is then channeled to 5D beings, for example, will pull things up automatically, because this is a spiritual shroud. That means it's a consciousness shroud. It can go right in your mind. And the entity that is the problem of evil will pull your worst fears out, and you'll hear some kind of dark, voice that we normally associate with an evil character in a horror movie come through the mix. Sometimes it's very clear. Or you can almost tell what they're saying. And if you become scared, you will hear stuff like that. And when you hear stuff like that, it gets worse. So the idea is to prevent it to begin with. And as I said in the last one, this isn't a contradiction. When you start to see these colors, a lot of time they're warming, or they're soothing, and then voices will happen. And the idea is to keep that equilibrium going. You have to realize that one of the basic mystery teachings that everyone should learn, that's why I talk about it, is your mood, and how you approach those areas is going to then populate what you experience, because the dominant defying mechanism, which is an active consciousness shroud, is going to work against that. And so it'll be easier to populate negative things that we'd associate with a haunting. So when you hear these voices, it'll be like, and this is medium stuff. Like I'm saying, if you're a person that has this calling, a lot of times the modern spiritual workers should automatically be involved with hospice, and being able to show people survival evidence for free for a reason. And the reason why I say hospice work, and which I was talking about in the last video, is because you know that you're not doing it for entertainment. I say you should never charge for any sort of spiritual work. Don't make those donations, right, to your psychic. They always say, oh, it's free, but to accept donations. No, that's a charge, because you then would feel guilty for not doing it, which would then channel in negative energy. So it's all free. This is an emergency we're living in right now, where people are being called to battle great evil, in the form of AI and just networks where online networks where people can just form opinions without proper research, and then get that high off of echo chambers. So this is a serious time we're living in. And yeah, so if you'll hear those voices, and you just want to be like, just be like, okay, what's going on here? Let's breathe in and out. Be like, and breathe in, focus, breathe out, then they'll start to calm down, the voices will start to level out, and then they'll become playful. Nature spirits will mess with you. And you breathe in, you breathe out, you focus, and then you focus on one that sounds pleasant, and you realize you can remove all the stuff that doesn't sound pleasant, and then you balance out the hot spot area. You take in the area because it's alive and way beyond those places that aren't lined up like that and aren't connected to someone who has their spirit organ waiting to be unwound, which is after initiation, which is a serious process. Yet there's modern versions, and I talk about that a lot. And so yeah, I just wanted to say that if you're, don't let that freak you out. Just meditate with it, and then you're in control. You are in control of what you pull out from that supernatural substance. Which is kind of complex because everything essentially is supernatural, but from that aether, that's it's the same thing that forms. I say I stay away from remote viewing or looking into crystals because as the calibration of the planet right now makes those types of methods a little just not very reliable. There's better ways to get results from the other side. But yet but I still do look at images for certain things. So if you're looking into a spiritual object, it doesn't have to be a crystal, or it can be any sort of area that's been turned into like a third-party relic, for example. I think I'm saying that right. I'm trying to remember art history. I think I'm saying that correctly, where you set something down in a sacred area and then you take it with you, and it's now. So if you're looking into something like that and an image is forming, that's utilization of spirit particles. That's the same thing. That's an image from the spirit particles, whereas the voices would be an audio emission from that. And then people who have their spirit organ unwind, they can just tune into that stuff. They can just reformat the waves of your mind waves, as Betty Shine would say, to mingle with that other dimension. And you just have to be like, okay, this seems natural. If I'm having those feelings, then I did this in another life. And if it seems natural, and that's part of what's going on here. People are being awakened for ascension, who have handled spirit work in a past life. And so those voices, which is like a man, that's absolutely consistent. All around the board. That's just going to happen. Don't dip into your horror movie explanation for things. And again, do not freak yourself out. It's one of the worst things you can do when you're dealing with the other dimension, because it's just like I was saying. Oh, okay, so it's almost 10 minutes here. All right, well that's that.